who are former members of the the Ethical Society in Essex County, had the courage to stand up against a true purveyor of misinformation, especially given the context that the misinformation was being given, which was in school. He was able to stop his teacher from using the position of authority that teacher enjoyed, to stop that position being used to promote falsehoods, religious intolerance, and indeed bigotry. So we do consider Matthew to be a true American hero, as the victories he has won are no less than victories for civil liberty and the separation of church and state. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody, and thanks very much for all of that. That was really nice, and anybody that knows me knows I love John Lennon, so that was really great. Basically, I'm going to try and tell you my story in as short of a period of time as I can, and that's going to be really difficult because there's a lot to talk about. Well, about 10 miles west of Manhattan is my hometown, Kearney, New Jersey, and Kearney is a pretty small and quiet town. There's not a lot of people. It's about, I think, 40,000, and it's a pretty peaceful town. I've always gotten along with people there, and my parents have always been involved in things that are going on in my hometown. Well, I heard from some of my sister's friends when I was going into my junior year in high school that there was this teacher named Mr. Paskevich that I had on my list for the teachers I was going to have for the coming year. And when I said Mr. Paskevich, they laughed, because they told me that this was a teacher who often interjected his personal religious and political beliefs during class. But I assumed that if anything was really, really going wrong in this class, somebody would have done something about it at this point, and the students that I was talking to, they wouldn't be laughing. But I didn't want to pass judgment on this teacher. So on September 11th, 2006, I went into this classroom. And I remember the first thing that my teacher did. I thought it was wonderful. He had a roll of tape in his hands, and he threw it out to each student, and he said, "Throw it back." And I know it sounds really, really just like nothing, but it was a great way to connect with the students. And I began to feel really comfortable, until he started to talk. Once he started to talk, I realized that what my sister's friends had mentioned about him was true, to the extreme. He said a lot of things that were very inappropriate. And really, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to deal with the situation, but I decided to let it go for another day, because I felt that maybe this was going to be a one-day occurrence and he wouldn't do it again. Second day I went into class. He did the same thing. So now I realized that I had a serious problem. I knew that the teacher was well-liked. I later found out that he has been teaching at Kearney High School for 14 years. And I later learned out that the principal of the school was actually his coach and his longtime friend. So at the time, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. But on the third day of classes, I decided that I should record the classes. And reason being, when you go to report something going on in the school, who is the school going to believe? A teacher who's been speaking for 14 years, or this 16-year-old upstart? So I decided it would be a good idea to record the classes. And basically, I'll try to cover a few things that my teacher said on these recordings. He told the students that the evolutionary theory was completely false. It was unscientific. He said the Big Bang Theory was unscientific. He told the students that dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark. He told the students that if they reject the Lord's salvation, they belong in hell. When he was talking to one student who had said that he had learned something from his mother and his pastor, my teacher, Mr. Paskevich, said, "Don't buy it." So he was violating not only the separation of church and state, but common sense. The last thing that you want to do is tell a student that he should not be listening to his parents. It's a bad idea. So during this period of time, I was recording the class. And on that Friday, I let my parents listen to the recordings. I didn't let them know I was recording until this point. And their reaction was interesting. They were obviously upset. And we really weren't sure quite what to do. But I decided it would probably be a good idea to start to report this now. And so I wrote a letter to my principal, basically stating a few of the things that my teacher had said during these classes. And on September 25th, that's when I gave him this letter. Now, it appeared clear that day when I gave this letter to the principal that my teacher, Mr. Beskevich, had been spoken to, because his attitude had completely changed. He seemed a little bit more on edge than usual. And also, when one student complained about the fact that we weren't having a discussion, I guess you can call it, this day, Mr. Beskevich said that he would like to talk about these things with the class, but somebody might change his words. And I knew what he was trying to convey with that. So, after 2 weeks of trying to get this issue resolved, I finally went into the principal's office and asked that we have a meeting with myself, Mr. Beskevich, and I was hoping my parents would come as well. Unfortunately, the principal told me that my parents would not be allowed to be in this meeting. Why, I don't really know. He never explained it, but I accepted it. I figured there were other ways to get things done. And so, on October 10th, the meeting finally took place. And I brought 4 sheets of paper with me that had a whole list of statements that my teacher had made. And I was hoping that this would lead them to believe that I had more than just what I may have written down during class. I was trying to lead my teacher to understand that there was something definitely going on here. But he denied making almost every single comment that he made in the class. And the meeting took about an hour. And not only did he deny making most of the statements, he went even further, because he was talking about how it's my fault that now he might lose his job. It's my fault that his kid may be in trouble because one of his kids has a kidney disease. He has 4 kids. Well, what is he going to do if he gets fired? And he kept putting me down a lot during this meeting, and I actually felt really bad, because as much as I didn't like what this teacher was doing, I could tell that in a sense he was hurt, but that doesn't mean that I should not do what I felt I had to do. So at the end of the meeting, after about an hour, and after I asked my teacher again, finally, if he said any of these things, and he denied it, I reached into my backpack and I pulled out recordings. And I told them that everything that I said in this meeting is true. Listen to the recordings. Well, the meeting changed a little bit. The teacher seemed to think that I'd set him up, and he openly said that. And the last thing the teacher said was, I'm paraphrasing here, but this part is exact. He said, "You got the big fish," which meant to me that I had caught him doing something wrong, even though he was saying he didn't do anything wrong. So it was a little bit confusing, but at that point, he said the last thing in that meeting, the principal stopped the meeting, and I was told to basically leave. So I figured that they would now do something, now that the principal knew what was going on in the classrooms. And I also knew that the recordings were given to the superintendent of schools, to the board attorney. I assumed that we would be contacted, but we were ignored for a while. We contacted multiple people throughout the administration. We contacted the principal, we contacted the board attorney, we contacted the Board of Education. Nobody responded to us for over a month. And what finally brought us over the edge was a conversation that my dad had with the board attorney, in which the board attorney told him that he has no right to know what's going on inside of these classrooms. Big mistake. Really big mistake. And so, finally, we decided that we would have to go to the press, because we were getting no response at all. Now, the response that I expected was going to be mixed. I was thinking some people would be angry, some people would be in support of what I was doing. That wasn't the reaction. The reaction was almost every single student that I had been friends with became angry with me. And a lot of people in the town became angry with me and supported the teacher. And I never really was able to figure out quite why. I don't think that most people in the town agreed that dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark. I don't think that most of the people agree with these statements, but he does seem like a nice guy.